The movie starts in a city hit by a pandemic. In that city, all the citizens fall asleep, and it is impossible to wake them up. It turns worse when the researchers figure that when they are moved up or shifted even a mile from where they are, their pulse goes dramatically up, affecting them. Because of this incident, the city has been sealed away from everyone. The pandemic selectively impacts city residents, sparing visitors from its effects. While every visitor leaves the city, a photographer, Samuel, intentionally travels down to capture these views. As he arrives from the water and hangs his boat, he hears all the announcements about how everyone should leave the city and calls the helpline if necessary. Samuel ignores all this advice and walks around the city, taking pictures of all the sleeping citizens. He sees a bus filled with people sleeping, and he enters the bus to take pictures of them. As he does this, he sees a lady sleeping with a goldfish in a nylon. He sees the fish is still awake, so he decides to take the fish with him. He walks around the city, and since it is night, he decides to take refuge at a place and rest. Upon entering, he sees that the kitchen tap is open. He decides to use a container to store water and place the fish in, giving it a new name, Apple. Moments later, he is shocked to see a sleeping lady inside the house. Looking at the tag on her wrist, he knows the lady's name is Stella. He looks at her in admiration but doesn't touch her. As the night ends, he goes into another room so he won't invade her privacy, while the researchers are seen roaming outside the house. That night, he dreams about entering a supermarket and seeing Stella. She has come to buy coffee to keep her awake, and when he tries to talk to her, she gives an unfriendly response. Regardless, he continues chatting with her, questioning her presence, and she reveals she's there to purchase coffee. He introduces himself as Samuel, but she doesn't care about him, which makes him more disappointed. She asks him what he is doing there, talking about the fact that no one invited him there, and that it is rude to come into another person's city uninvited. In the next scene, Samuel is seen waking up from his sleep. He encourages the sleeping Stella to also wake up before he dresses up and starts his adventure in the sleeping city. He first sees a man sleeping on a tree and takes his picture. Then he also sees that all the animals in the city are awake, so he wonders who is taking care of them. Later on, he sees a church, and when he enters, he finds the sleeping worshippers. He takes pictures of them, eventually decides to take a rest. He dozes off and dreams of Stella again. This time, she invites him to sit with her and asks why he has visited. He introduces himself as a photographer who has come to take pictures and document the events. She accuses him of pursuing it for money, but he insists it's currently about creating memories, though he acknowledges money may be a factor in the future. He wakes up and continues his adventure before returning home. At home, he checks on Stella again. He wants to know more about her, so he reads her journal on the pillow. In the journal, she talks about being the last person affected by the sleeping pandemic, with her piano teacher being the first victim during their rehearsal. When Samuel asks her how she felt at that instance, she claims she felt more confused than scared. The doctors diagnose the teacher, revealing she's perfectly healthy, except for being unresponsive during sleep. Stella talks about a peculiar aspect of the pandemic, that is, victims remain well until they are shifted from their sleeping position, at which point their pulse may spike, posing potential harm. Curious, Samuel tries to test the myth by shifting the position of a boy in the pool, but nothing happens. Later, when he gets into hallucinations and sees her again, she tells him about how she fell asleep. She first felt very weak and thirsty. She starts having weird dreams, and she later starts feeling dizzy, although not in a bad way, and she eventually fell asleep. The following day, Samuel leaves the house to continue, and he sees a car filled with balloons. He is excited to take the picture, but when he sees the researchers, the scene changes back at home, and he tells Stella it isn't safe for him to remain in that city, so he has to leave. He tries to leave, but upon reaching his boat, he decides otherwise. Upon returning, the tap turns itself on again. He gets confused because he is sure he switched it off earlier. He meets Stella again in his dreams, and she asks him the real reason why he visited. Samuel eventually reveals that he came to see her. A summer ago, he visited the city with friends and met her at the supermarket. Too shy to approach, he walks away defeated. When asked what he would have done, he mentions inviting her out, a possibility she considers accepting. Later, he goes to the supermarket, and when he sees the researchers approaching, he pretends to be asleep. After they leave, Samuel stands up feeling delighted, as he happily shops for some essentials and even jokingly pays the sleeping cashier. Samuel returns home, feeling the urge to know more about Stella. He looks around the house and gets to the basement, where he sees an audio recording. In the recorder, Stella speaks about the things she likes, like a person chewing nails, the weird sound of a typewriter, a person wearing flip-flops where he shouldn't be wearing them, and other odd things that gets her excited. Later, he sees her again in his dream. This time she asks that they take an adventure. He reminds her that she doesn't have a car, and she suggests they take a car from anyone in the city. He doesn't like this idea, but she thinks they would only be borrowing it and not stealing. She sees a locked car, and she enters the owner's house to take the keys. They travel to the sea and watch the beautiful scenery together. As they are about to share a kiss, he hears a car horn and wakes up back to reality. That is when he sees that the researchers are in front of the house to check on Stella. He hides until they finish their checkup, and he comes out later to cover her body while lying beside her. He continues to listen to her tape, and she talks about how she always feels so lonely. She talks about her wish to drive a flamingo and how she would love to have a friend. Samuel sees her again and asks her if she thinks she has a soulmate. She confides in him about having a previous soulmate, but now she feels utterly alone. Samuel jokingly suggests that they are the perfect soulmate for each other, but Stella is seen disagreeing. Stella advises him to leave before he gets hit by the pandemic too. Samuel opts to depart, but cannot bring himself to do so. Depressed, Samuel talks to her jacket, yearning for her to wake up and meet him in the real world. That night, Samuel goes for a smoke and fantasizes about smoking together with Stella while getting intimate with her. In the next scene, Samuel is back in reality as he feeds his fish. He decides to stay and do the things Stella enjoys. He bakes a cake to eat while drinking alcohol and soon gets tipsy. That is when he starts imagining Stella getting annoyed, and she appears in front of him, insisting he doesn't know her completely, but he disagrees. Stella points out he can't learn everything about her by snooping through her belongings while she is asleep. Samuel realizes she is right, as all these occurrences were merely just his imagination. Regardless, Stella decides to leave him instead. The following day, back in reality, Samuel decides to leave again. This time, however, an intense thirst overwhelms him. Unable to locate any water, he soon begins experiencing hallucinations and a sensation of dizziness while struggling to stay awake. That is when he receives a call from Stella, who tells him that she doesn't think it is fair for him to change for her, and he also admits that she is right. Samuel is then brought back to reality and starts connecting his recent feelings to the early start of the pandemic. He drinks water from the flower and realizes he will soon fall into a deep sleep too. Since he is going to fall asleep soon, he wants to sleep by her side. Samuel decides to use his remaining time to write down his thoughts for Stella using the typewriter. Struggling to stay awake, he drinks water and eats apples. However, he eventually falls asleep. Sometime later, Stella finally wakes up and struggles to go to the bathroom due to her weak body. When she is about to brush her teeth, she notices 2 toothbrushes in her house. She realizes there is someone else in the house. Stella searches the house and eventually finds the sleeping Samuel. She tries to wake him up to no avail. She starts noticing all the random things that she likes and assumes that he has prepared them for her, including the cake she enjoys. Her attention is drawn to an envelope which contains the messages he has typed for her before falling asleep. After reading it, she gets angry after knowing that he has read her journal and listening to her recordings. Furious, she hits him, but calms down soon after. She decides to continue reading the messages he has for her. She starts to feel connected to him as if this random stranger has known her inside out. Soon, Stella starts seeing Samuel in her dreams. She interviews him to know him better, just like how he did with her before. One morning, Stella wakes and sees Samuel's bed empty. She assumes he has left, but finds him in the kitchen. That is when they meet each other for the first time in reality. They formally introduce themselves but feel connected, as if they have known each other for a long time. At the movie's end, the lady with the goldfish wakes up. She takes her nylon of fish but sees 2 fishes inside it now. Subscribe to watch more videos like this, leave a like to help the channel out. Also, leave a comment if you'd like us to recap your favorite movie. Thanks for watching.